And it said Midnighter. Midnighter, alongside his future husband Apollo, was part of the top secret Stormwatch team created by the first weatherman, Henry Bendix. Nobody but Bendix himself knew of the team's existence. Bendix built them as superhumans, and when they donned their costumes and spoke their code names, their previous identities ceased to exist. Midnighter has the power to predict how a situation will happen before it starts. This allows him to run through a given situation millions of times in his mind, instantly covering every possible result before his first move is even made. He uses this information to predict the actions and or reactions of others, counteracting their moves almost before they even think to make them, effectively making Midnighter the greatest tactician in the history of mankind. Basically the good guy version of the Thinker. That's pretty cool. He could be Batman just because he knew every single way it would happen. And at 9, the Atomic Knight. The Atomic Knights appeared in every third issue of Strange Adventures in the early 1960s, beginning with number 117 and running through number 160. In all, there were 15 early 1960s Atomic Knight stories created by writer John Broome and artist Murphy Anderson. They were a band of heroes living in and protecting the post-apocalyptic future of 1992. Yep, at that point it was the future. Following the catastrophic hydrogen war of 1986, a petty tyrant named the Black Baron ruled a small section of the Midwestern United States with an iron fist. He was opposed by Sergeant Gardner Grail of the Atomic Knights, who wore medieval suits of armor that were impervious to the Baron's energy weapons, the armor having been irradiated in the war. Gardner Grail also has precognition and wears a suit of armor that grants him enhanced speed, strength, endurance, and lets him blast energy, as well as being adaptable to other technology. And at 8, Acrida. Andrea's father was Bernardo Rojas, once a renowned leader in Central America who researched pre-Hispanic cultures at a university in Mexico. She lived along with her cat named Zapata, named after one of the revolutionary leaders in Mexico. Acrida specialized in striking against organized crime. Every time she caught a perpetrator or helped avert a tragedy, she cited a literary quotation, or if she had the time, painted graffiti insulting or challenging the local authorities, which might hint at her being a bit of an anarchist, which honestly I'm kinda into. This character seemed to be kind of a Mexican Batman, and despite her anarchist tendencies, she often worked with another 2 Mexican superheroes, Iman and El Muerto. Together with these 2 allies and Superman, she once saved Mexico and the world from the total destruction from a bad guy group trying to channel the powers inherent to the ley lines of Earth to accomplish their goals. So good on ya, Andrea. Good on you. And at 7, Jack-O-Lantern. The first Jack-O-Lantern is Daniel Cormack of Ireland, who was born to a poor farmer who was granted a magical lantern by an Irish fairy. Yep, that's how we're going with this. Cormac is a member of the Global Guardians, an international group of superheroes. His first recorded mission in Super Friends number 8 was to help Green Lantern dismantle a bomb in Ireland. Both Daniel Cormack and Marvin Noronza, the second Jack-O-Lantern, have a mystical lantern that gives them the power of flight, flame projection, teleportation, illusion casting, enhanced strength, and the ability to just create fogs. The power of the lantern is also its weakest at noon and gradually increases until its peak at midnight. Liam McHugh, the third Jack-O-Lantern, found a way to internalize the powers of the mystical lantern and no longer needs to carry it. So yeah. And at 6, Apollo. Essentially the Wildstorm universe's answer to Superman, Apollo is now technically a part of the DC superhero universe, like Wildstorm ever since the 2 universes converged following the events of Flashpoint. Apollo possesses many of the same powers as Superman, but with a few notable differences. Like Kal-El, Apollo possesses superhuman strength, flight, and near invulnerability. If you want some clarification as to just how impervious to damage he is, he's able to walk on the surface of the sun. Apollo also has the ability to shoot lasers from his eyes, derived from solar energy, but unlike Superman, he can also release this energy from other parts of his body, including his hands and mouth. This dude can fire lasers from his mouth. He uses hyper beam in real life. His only real weakness is that he relies on the sun for his powers, so if he doesn't get enough exposure, his powers will diminish, but hey, at least Apollo isn't vulnerable to kryptonite. Halfway through into number 5, Swamp Thing. In a secret facility located in the Louisiana swamplands, scientist Alec Holland and his wife Linda invented a bio-restorative formula that would solve any nation's food shortage problems. Ferret and Bruno, thugs working for Nathan Ellery, barged into Alec's lab, knocked him out, and planted a bomb in the facility. Alec woke up just as the bomb exploded, and in the flames he ran into the swamp. His body had been drenched in the bio-restorative formula, and this affected the plant life of the swamp, imbuing it with Alec's consciousness and memories. The newly conscious plant life then formed a semblance of a human form and rose up from the bog as the Swamp Thing, the latest in a long line of Earth elementals created when the Green was in need of protection. His body is composed of sentient sentient vegetable matter. He has the ability to nourish himself, superhuman strength, elemental control, chlorokinesis, astral projection, biofission, immortality, regeneration, size alteration, resurrection, you name it, and Swampy can do it. Swampy, away! And in 4, Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle was scot-free, the god of escape in the New Gods mythology. A Genesian raised on Apocalypse, he defected with his lover Big Barda to Earth, where he used the skills he learned in escapology, both as a performance artist and in the Justice League of America. Originally, the boy scot-free was the son of High Father Isaiah, the ruler of New Genesis. However, as a part of a diplomatic move to stop a destructive war against the planet Apocalypse, High Father agreed to an exchange of children with his enemy Darkseid. In doing so, he surrendered scot-free to the care of his enemy while he received his enemy's son Orion. This guy has new god physiology, okay, making him immortal, super strength, super durable, and giving him super agility. Plus, when utilizing his full godly potential, Mr. Miracle wields a cosmic energy field called Alpha Effect, which allows him to transverse through time and space, heal living beings, fully restore creatures back from death, and control energy to an almost boundless degree. Yep, you're on the list. Getting close to the end in at number 3, JEMM, son of Saturn. After both his mother and teacher were killed by the White Martians, JEMM stole a ship and escaped to Earth, in search of his lover Syra, who had fled there earlier. He arrives in Harlem, New York and is befriended by an orphan named Luther Mankin. After a series of adventures with and without Luther, JEMM eventually found Syra. They all then traveled to New Bok, a red Saturnian colony, but because he refused to take sides in a civil war on New Bok, JEMM was disavowed and cast out by both factions. Dispirited, JEMM and Luther returned to Earth, and given that JEMM is a form of Martian in a sense, his Saturnian physiology gives him flight, metamorphosis, physiokinesis, telekinesis, telepathy, energy projection, superhuman durability, superhuman stamina, and superhuman strength that allows him to match Martian Manhunter blow for blow. So I think this is a pretty worthy number 3. Penultimately, in at number 2, Karate Kid. Karate Kid is actually Val Armour, a superhero from the future and also a member of the Legion of Superheroes. He is a master of every form of martial arts to have ever been developed by the 30th century. The extent of his skill was so great that he could severely damage various types of hard material with a single blow, and was briefly able to hold his own against Superboy through the use of what he called super karate. So he already seems pretty legit. Val Armour was the son of Japanese greatest crime lord Kiaru Nozumi, also known as the Black Dragon. When he was born, his mother, an American secret agent known as Valentina Armour, tried to hide him from his father, but she failed to do so and was killed for her affront. Japan's biggest hero, Sensei Toshiaki, and the White Crane, eventually killed the Black Dragon for his crimes and then adopted the infant Val. He raised Val as if he were his own son and trained him in all manner of martial arts. Val became the youngest warrior ever to earn the title of samurai, and he went on to work for his local shogun. However, after trying his best and failing to please his supervisor, he quit and searched the galaxy for new forms of battle to master. That just goes to show you, people, appreciate your employees, otherwise they're gonna quit and go search the galaxy for new forms of martial arts, okay? And finally, in at number 1, Blue Beetle. Jamie Reyes was a relatively normal high school student from El Paso, Texas. His father ran a garage and his mother was a paramedic, and he had a little sister who was a total brat. Jamie hung out with his 2 best friends, Brenda and Paco, and he acted as like the mediator between the hardworking Brenda and the laid-back Paco. By both Brenda and Paco's accounts, he was a good friend, kind of person who could just let them be themselves and would always make things better. Jamie aimed to help his father out in the garage, but Alberto turned him down, not wanting to see his son grow up too fast. Ted Cord, the second Blue Beetle, had come into possession of the Blue Beetle Scarab, the artifact which had given Dan Garrett, the first Blue Beetle, his powers. The Scarab had been presumed destroyed early in Ted's superhero career, but it was discovered intact in a pyramid in the Middle East. This is where Jamie gets his powers as well. What are those powers, you ask? The Scarab can and will use its powers of its own accord. Jamie, however, can override the Scarab if need be, and should Jeremy fall prey to mind-altering power, the Scarab will take control of the armor. So it will act on its own, and basically he's not mind control anymore because it's just the Scarab doing it, not actually him. So yeah, number 1 hands down.
Coming in at number 10, we have Kamala Khan, aka the latest and greatest Ms. Marvel. Originally just an Avengers fangirl growing up with her parents in Jersey City, Kamala Khan's life was changed forever when the Terrigen Mists incident took place and activated her hidden inhuman powers. Kamala was amazed to discover she was actually a polymorph and was capable of completely altering the size of her body. Inspired by her lifelong hero, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, Kamala Khan became the next next generation's Ms. Marvel, using her powers as a member of the Young Avengers and becoming the type of hero she'd always dreamed of becoming. Coming in at number 9, we have the iconic vampire killer known as Blade. Born as a human-vampire hybrid named Eric Brooks, Blade has all of the powers of a Marvel Universe vampire with nearly none of the negative side effects. He possesses superhuman strength and speed, with all of his senses heightened to make him a perfect predator, while being immune to damage from sunlight, silver, or holy artifacts that would instantly turn a regular vampire powerless. While he does still need the nutrients from fresh human blood to prevent himself from losing control of his hunger, Blade often uses a special serum as opposed to actually draining the blood of any humans. With so many strengths and so little weaknesses, Blade is definitely a blood-sucking force to be reckoned with. Coming in at number 8, we have the crazed character known as GWENPOOL. One of the weirder characters from throughout the Marvel multiverse, Gwendolyn Poole is originally from an alternate reality that just might be our own, before somehow getting sucked into the Marvel 616 universe through a comic book, granting her even more fourth-wall breaking powers than even her namesake of Deadpool. With the ability to manipulate all aspects of her comic book world, such as physically interacting with lettering and caption boxes, GWENPOOL is capable of literally rewriting reality to get the upper hand on her opponents, making her powers some of the most unusual throughout all of Marvel history, but still counting as some of the most powerful to ever come from a teen hero. Coming in at number 7, we have Vulcan, the secret third brother of Scott and Alex Summers, also known as Gabriel Summers. Born on the Shi'ar throne world following his parents' abduction by the Shi'ar Empire, Gabriel was aged rapidly in an incubation accelerator, and discovered he was an Omega-level mutant far above his brother's power back on Earth, giving him the unique ability to control the elements of water, wind, earth, fire, electricity, light, and darkness, using these incredible powers to take over the Shi'ar Empire and become their new emperor. And while this position of power would occasionally bring him into conflict with the X-Men, he still could generally be counted upon to fight for the side of good with his incredibly impressive power set. Coming in at number 6, we have the upcoming Disney Plus star, Moon Knight. A street-level Marvel hero with powers that go far beyond the usual street, Mark Spector is a vessel for an Egyptian god known as Khonshu. Able to embrace the 4 different aspects of this deity as 4 distinct personalities within his own head, Moon Knight is strongest under the light of a full moon, giving him physical strength far beyond that of a normal man, and a pain tolerance that is nearly limitless. On top of his supernatural abilities, Mark is also an expert in both weaponry and hand-to-hand combat, combining them with his moon-based powers into a deadly combination that makes him one of the ultimate crime fighters and mercenaries in the entire Marvel world. Coming in at number 5, we have Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. One of the original members of the Fantastic Four, Ben Grimm found his entire body converted into an orange rock-like substance after being bombarded with cosmic rays alongside the rest of the Fantastic Four during their initial fated journey into space. Because of this transformation, Ben has become the physically strongest member of the team by far, and appears to be continuing to get stronger with age, capable of lifting 30,000 tons worth of a building to prevent it from collapsing, and even being able to push back entire alien motherships. He might often get overlooked compared to some of the other brawny Marvel heroes like Thor and the Hulk, but the Thing is definitely a strong contender whenever it counts. Coming in at number 4, we have the Sorcerer Supreme, aka Dr. Stephen Strange. Doctor Strange is Earth's primary defender against mystical threats in the Marvel Universe, and always seems to have some sort of spell available to solve whatever problem is currently facing Earth's mightiest heroes. As a master of the mystic arts, Strange has also entirely stopped aging, and is effectively immortal, being unable to die from any medical diseases or regular symptoms of old age. And when Strange recently did die in the Marvel comic called The Death of Dr. Doctor Strange, he had already concocted a way for a younger version of himself from the timeline to take his place and defend Earth against any extra-dimensional forces that might seek to take advantage of his own death. There's planning ahead, and then there's Dr. Stephen Strange taking it to a whole different level. Coming in at number 3, we have Bobby Drake, aka Iceman. As one of the earlier members of the Uncanny X-Men, Bobby has had a lot of time over the years to explore his powers, and contrary to appearances, he can do far more than just convert his body into ice. Classified as an Omega level mutant, the most powerful kind there is, Iceman is capable of not only controlling the temperature of all of his own molecules, but is able to manipulate water molecules entirely as part of his own mass. This means the possibilities for Bobby's powers are as intense and malleable as water itself, allowing him to freeze the blood within enemies' veins, travel instantly through a stream of water, or even turn himself into a massive snow-covered giant capable of wading his way across the literal ocean. Totally not showing off there, Bobby. Totally not. Coming in at number 2, we have Peter Parker, aka the Spectacular Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man definitely isn't known for being a weakling, but his actual physical strength is actually far beyond what anyone in even the Marvel Universe would expect. Under situations of intense stress, Peter Parker has been shown as capable of lifting literal tons worth of rubble and debris, far beyond the usual strength that he generally seems to show off. And when Peter Parker's body was briefly taken over by Otto Octavius's brain, the villain was stunned to discover that Spider-Man has actually been holding back every punch he's ever thrown, after the villain controlling Peter's body accidentally punched the Scorpion's jaw right off. Maybe it's a good idea to not try and get punched by Spider-Man. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Incredible Hulk, a character who's known for being strong, but might actually be the most underrated when it comes to just how strong he can become. Ever since being bombarded with gamma rays, Bruce Banner's limits for physical strength have been said to be practically non-existent, with all-knowing characters like the Beyonder outright stating that the Hulk has no limits to his physical strength. The only difference between different Hulk forms is their starting strength, with all of them still having the potential to theoretically complete feats such as outpulling a black hole. It's this endless capacity for potential destruction that has made the Hulk such an alluring target to evil forces over the years, but if the Hulk's proven anything, it's that maybe he's not a guy you should try to mind control.
An intense shocker. Herman Schultz's parents died when his younger brother Marty was a boy. From a young age, Schultz turned to a life of crime. However, he soon realized that he wasn't really good at it, having been arrested several times. After one robbery gone wrong, he got arrested again, but was sent to a prison workshop, where he used the resources around him to build gauntlets that sent out shock waves which quickly opened safes as well, giving himself a one-up on the authorities, a much needed one. Now I know what you're thinking, but how could a guy named Herman be any form of powerful? Well, the Shocker had the ability to shock his enemies with his handheld vibro shock units. But because the vibrations were so fierce, he wore a heavily insulated suit, and during his first outing as the self-styled Shocker, he ran into and defeated Spider-Man. Plus, I mean, he's the Shocker. He shocks people. In at 9, Hydro Man. Morris Bench was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. He began working as a crewman on a cargo ship, but he was accidentally knocked overboard by Spider-Man while a powerful experimental generator was being lowered into the ocean for testing. Exposed to the energy conversion process of the generator while being bombarded with volcanic gas, Bench's cellular structure was altered. When he was rescued from the depths, though, his body began extruding great quantities of some watery substance, which Bench first attributed to just being sweat. Annoyed by the incessant dripping, Bench went to a local pub to stir up trouble, finding none, but he was astonished to learn that he could convert his entire physical form into basically water. While he may just be a form of Sandman being able to convert to water instead of sand, he certainly seems more powerful to me. There is water basically everywhere, and our bodies are made of 70% water, so if Bench was able to tap into the water that is in his enemies' bodies, that would be a freaking nightmare. not to mention a horrible sight. And it ain't the Kingpin. A crime boss is one thing. A crime boss that to the public is a well-respected philanthropist and businessman is something else. Especially a businessman who is like 300 pounds of muscle. Wilson Fisk is an absolute madman who runs most of the New York and Las Vegas criminal underworld. However, things get even more intense after his wife is killed so that he doesn't retire. After the murder of his wife, not only did he resume leadership of his former organization, but he also turned over the files on other criminal leaders to law enforcement through the costumed crime fighter of Daredevil, now with the motive of ridding himself of any rivals, and the ploy actually worked, and as a result of the evidence in the files, many crime leaders, both inside and outside the Mafia, were convicted. In the ensuing power vacuum, the Kingpin rebuilt his coalition stronger than before. He moved on to control a great majority of non-Mafia East Coast gangs dealing in conventional crimes, and the Kingpin's organization became stronger than any single Mafia family in the New York area could ever withstand. We love a savvy businessman. And at 7, Spidercide. Spidercide is a more obscure and odd Spider-Man villain that I still think would give the hero a run for his money nowadays. Being first introduced as Spidercide in New Warriors number 61, this version of Peter Parker is one of the clones made by Dr. Miles Warren, an entirely separate villain that caused the whole clone debacle and the introduction of Ben Reilly and the Scarlet Spider. But what's notable about Spidercide is not only him having all of Spider-Man's powers, but also the ability to stretch and warp his body at will, similar to Mr. Fantastic. Spidercide is certainly deadly as well, helping Jackal to release a virus in Springfield, Pennsylvania, which resulted in the deaths of over 2,600 people, which Homer Simpson was definitely not happy about. But either way, Spidercide with all the abilities of Spider-Man and Mr. Fantastic makes him pretty damn powerful for a villain that not really many people know about. And at 6, Kraven the Hunter. Karanoff found that he had a great talent for finding employment in Kenya, Africa. Karanoff began his career using the typical tools of the hunter, but over time he developed a preference to take down large animals with his bare hands. So, you know, already a psycho in the making. After meeting a voodoo witch doctor named Calypso, Karanoff took a herbal potion which enhanced his physical powers and gave him strength, speed, and senses to match a jungle cat. The potion also extended his life greatly, keeping his health and vitality for years to come. At some point, the notion of big game hunting became a bore to the hunter, so his associate Chameleon, who was later revealed to be his half-brother, proposed to Kraven that he hunt Spider-Man, and thus gave Kraven a new purpose in life. Kraven gained additional powers by drinking more rare and exotic jungle elixirs given to him by his voodoo priestess lover Calypso. These elixirs gave him the strength and speed of a savage beast, and all the better to catch Spider-Man with, right? Despite being assisted by the Chameleon, his scheme failed and he was deported from the US, but he would definitely come back. Halfway through and at number 5, Toxin. Born from Carnage as the 1000th symbiote in its lineage, Toxin was feared to be the strongest and most dangerous of their race by both Venom and Carnage. Shortly after being born, the symbiote united with police officer Pat Mulligan. Years later, the symbiote was removed from Mulligan by Blackheart, who beat Pat Mulligan to death in a gutter. With the help of Venom, Jack-o'-lantern took it to its boss, Crime Master. Crime Master, though, found the perfect host in Eddie Brock, who he forced to become Toxin's host. You know, Eddie Brock, the former host of Venom. After bonding with Eddie, Toxin took over its host and worked with the Savage Six, attacking its grandfather symbiote Venom. And with Toxin seemingly coming to the big screen in the future, being introduced in Let There Be Carnage, okay, well, Pat Mulligan was introduced, and then he had some like freaky thing happen with his eyes near the end of the movie, but still, it's very close to it. This guy is also just a freaking freak, okay? He can grow fangs and claws when he's angry. It just happens. It's not something that he thinks of, it just happens. Something that Venom and Carnage are unable to do. However, Toxin is also unable to be tracked by Venom or Carnage, as well as being immune to Spider-Man's spider sense. So this dude is hella off the radar, which only makes things freakier. And at 4, ANTI-VENOM. When Eddie Brock separated from the Venom symbiote, traces of it were still left in his body. Later though, suffering from cancer, Brock started working as a volunteer in the Feast Center. Martin Lee, the founder of Feast, and the alter ego of the supervillain Mr. Negative, used his powers to cure Eddie's cancer. But in the process, Lee accidentally infused the remnants of the symbiote in Eddie's bloodstream with his power, and fused them to his white blood cells, creating a new hybrid symbiote which manifested when the Venom symbiote attempted to leave its then current host Matt Gargan and Spider-Man returned to Eddie. This new symbiote, dubbed ANTI-VENOM by Eddie, demonstrated tremendous healing powers and other powers that differ from the Venom symbiote, as well as having an inverted color scheme, or a negative color scheme, if you will, such as producing antibodies that can cure any known disease and removing any other impurities within a human body. Unlike other symbiotes though, this symbiote is completely mindless, and Eddie Brock is in full control of its actions. This symbiote was destroyed when it was used as the cure for the spider virus, which had turned various characters into human spider hybrids. However, it was remade as Agent Anti-Venom after Flash Thompson ended up getting soaked with anti-venom serum. That's a whole other story. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Shathra. An inhabitant of the astral plane, Shathra is the spider wasp to Peter Parker's spider. She learned of Spider-Man when he strayed from the safe path during a visit to the astral plane to locate the interdimensional kidnapper known as the Shade. Shathra immediately realized Spider-Man's true nature and determined that he would make the perfect meal for her hungry young hatchlings. Great! First introduced in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2 number 46 in 2002, Shathra quickly followed Spider-Man's scent back to Earth. She engaged Spider-Man in a battle that demonstrated her clearly superior speed and strength, but Spider-Man was able to use his superior knowledge of New York City to find temporary escape. But of course he only knew that it was a matter of time before Shathra would locate him once more. Shathra turned the game in a new direction though, changing to a human form and adopting the name Sharon Keller. And she went on TV to pose as Spider-Man's jitted lover. She went on TV and revealed a series of convincing and humiliating details, and of course this made Mary Jane upset. So, spurred on by Mary Jane's distress, Peter rose to the taunt. He gatecrashed the studio interview and attacked Sharon Keller in full view of live TV. Shathra reverted to her Spider-Wasp form, but her gambit had achieved its goal of pushing Spider-Man to act on pure instinct, which ended up making him the prey, because they were at their actual primordial positions. He was the prey, she was the hunter because she's the Spider-Wasp. You get it, you get it. But ultimately, in at number 2, Chameleon. Being the first villain Spider-Man ever faced way back in Amazing Spider-Man number 1 from 1963 and my costume from yesterday, I think that Chameleon is a more underrated villain than he should be. Being able to look like anyone at any time is pretty damn overpowered, especially when you can use it to look like Spider-Man and even use suction cups to stick to walls, even if it's slightly unrealistic. This character is especially powerful when he has superpowers, like in the 90s animated Spider-Man series, where after Alistair Smythe infused him with a techno-organic virus, could simply look at you and end up transforming into you. It's actually insanely overpowered when you look at it like that, since he can also transform his clothes. He could be fleeing from Spider-Man and turn the corner and then be anyone, so it's certainly someone to fear, unless they use the original version who has to use disguises and makeup to look like anyone they want, since that process takes time and can't be turned on and off. And finally, in at number 1, the Spot. As a scientist working for the Kingpin, Dr. Owen was assigned to reproduce the radiation levels of the Vigilante cloak to find a way to artificially mimic his powers. Working late one night, he succeeded, creating a solid black circular portal. In doing so, however, the drain on the city's power became so great that a blackout washed over the city, causing the portal to shimmer and destabilize. Fearful of losing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Owen stepped into it, and the power shortage caused the portal to send him to a different dimension, a place of half darkness and half light. When Owen emerged back into his lab, his body had undergone a radical transformation. The portals from the other dimension had adhered to his skin, covering him with black spots from head to toe. The reason this is absolutely terrifying, and is the most overpowered villain you wouldn't expect, is because he now had the ability to control these portals. If the man wanted to decapitate you, he easily could. Just close a portal at any part of your body, and then boom, amputation, around your neck, you're dead. It's horrifying. Spider-Man in the 90s cartoon would use these portals to land a punch on Owen, but if Owen just decided to close it or he lost his focus to keep them open, that would have been real bad. Just stay away from this guy, straight up. Don't even try to fight him.